收工。 大家準備啦！好，歡迎大家嚟到今日警方嘅記者會啊！咁首先我介紹下台上邊5位嘅講者先。咁首先大家嘅正中間咧就係警察公共關係科總警司啦，謝振中先生。咁啊，謝 Sir 嘅左手邊咧，咁就係我哋警察公共關係科高級警司湯永祥先生。咁而家謝 Sir 嘅右手邊，咁就係有組織罪案及三合會調查科高級警司李桂華先生。咁啊，李 Sir 嘅右手邊咧，咁就係新界北總區處理高級警司行動韋華高先生。咁而家大家最右方咧，咁就係行動部警司方志堅先生。咁稍後咧幾位講者會先後發言嘅，咁跟住落嚟會有個問題時間。咁啊，如果想發問嘅記者咧，麻煩舉舉手講出你嚟自邊個傳媒機構嘅。咁啊，最多係問3條。咁啊，跟住問完之後將個咪交翻俾我嘅同事。咁啊，事不宜遲啦，我交個時間俾謝 Sir。
好，大家好，各位。喺過去呢個週末咧，暴徒繼續毆打市民，肆意破壞公共設施，瘋狂縱火同掟汽油彈，污蔑國旗、襲警、搶槍，暴力行為全面升級，將香港推入一個萬劫不復嘅地步。喺星期六，有大批激進嘅示威者偏離咗既定嘅遊行路線，喺屯門同元朗區大肆破壞。佢哋用鐵馬、垃圾桶等等嘅雜物肆意堵路、縱火，癱瘓區內嘅交通。激進示威者多次拆下附近建築物嘅國旗，用噴漆塗污、踐踏、焚燒，公然污蔑國旗，行為令人髮指。激進示威者目無法紀，癱瘓唔同港鐵站嘅入口，打爛售票機、八達通機、閉路電視嘅鏡頭等等。亦有人擅闖路軌嘅範圍，投擲雜物，並且破壞路軌旁一啲信號嘅設備。而喺星期日，亦都有激進嘅示威者罔顧鐵路系統嘅安全，喺南昌站非法闖入車尾駕駛室，並放下緊急梯，甚至投擲雜物落路軌嘅範圍，草管乘客嘅生命。試問，如果市民或者乘客嘅安全因為示威者嘅行為而受到嚴重嘅傷害，邊個去負呢個責任？暴徒向警察投擲磚頭、射彈珠，亦都投擲汽油彈，好明顯佢哋係志在攞命。有部分嘅警車亦都被汽油彈掉中而着火，大家可以睇睇啲相。甚至喺星期六晚，有一名暴徒喺元朗區公然向一架有警務人員嘅警車投擲汽油彈，而同時當時生命安全受到嚴重嘅威脅，為咗保護自己同他人嘅人身安全，同時落咗車拔槍戒備，驅散暴徒。事件中呢位警員表現英勇而且克制，果斷利落，決定合情合理。另外，警方喺制服暴徒嘅期間，被數十名暴徒用雨遮、行山杖同硬物瘋狂毆打，甚至有暴徒伸手拉扯佢嘅配槍，意圖搶槍。大家可以睇睇片。
追捕期間，懷疑有人意圖搶警員嘅配槍，但係唔成功。
其後有人喺網上鼓吹針對警務人員嘅暴力行為，分析點樣可以搶到警槍。搶警槍已經係由網上討論嘅行為變成暴徒一啲實際嘅行為。試問，如果當時嘅警員嘅配槍，如果真係俾暴徒成功咁搶走，後果會係點呢？警方仲有乜嘢可以選擇做呢？警方而家作出最嚴厲嘅警告，任何人企圖搶去警察嘅裝備或者配槍，警務人員係必定會使用相應嘅武力制止，後果自負。除此之外，暴徒毆打市民、濫用私刑已變成常態化，暴力蔓延到全港每一個角落，佢哋行為變本加厲，肆意襲擊普通嘅市民，顯露咗佢哋殘暴嘅真面目。星期六晚喺元朗區，喺短短1個鐘頭裏面，區內喺一個好細嘅範圍裏面發生咗4宗暴徒毆打市民嘅事件。星期六晚喺元朗康樂路有2名市民同暴徒發生爭執，大量嘅暴徒用鐵枝、垃圾桶甚至摺凳打到佢哋頭破血流，追打佢哋去到街口之後不斷毆打佢哋。即使有普通市民試圖阻止，仍有女暴徒用摺凳大力襲擊受害人嘅頭部。請你哋睇下而家暴徒嘅行為。
男人上前嘅時候，被人用鐵枝擊中頭部，流血倒地。隨即有幾個蒙面嘅男人襲擊佢，佢後退到街口，更多人湧出嚟圍毆佢哋。佢頭破血流，仍然有一個女人用鐵框打佢嘅頭。
冇問題喎，你中意就上嚟叫車嚟啦。去咩？先生，你想死點解唔自殺咧？做咩要自殺？但你話你想死喎，但係。我知死我想死啊！
喺差唔多同一個時間呢，有另一名背心男子，當時佢途經元朗大馬路，同在場嘅暴徒因為懷疑撕去附近嘅海報呢，進而被人哋包圍。即使佢上咗的士呢，暴徒仍然將佢扯咗落嚟，唔俾佢離開。其後將佢推落牆角，用長遮等遮住鏡頭，再打到佢血流不止。施襲過後呢，暴徒繼而就一齊咁散去。呢啲暴力嘅行為令人髮指，我哋可以睇一睇片。
佢一度跪低要求離開，有人上前阻止其他人喐手。冇啦，唔需要輸㗎，斯文意㗎。佢之後俾人拉出車廂。
白色背心嘅男人呢，就係俾一班人圍住，並且呢，就係剛才呢，就係俾人襲擊㗎。咁啊，而家呢，佢就係倒地。咁啊，佢俾人襲擊之後呢，現時呢，就係瞓咗喺馬路度。
從呢啲暴徒嘅文宣呢，警方睇到呢啲暴徒不停咁樣去措辭美化，甚至浪漫化佢哋嘅暴力行為，用歪理去解釋佢哋試圖滅聲嘅目的，從而剝奪其他人嘅言論自由。大家可以睇到，暴徒覺得佢哋喺街上打人呢，令到人哋唔敢發聲，呢個行為呢係取得非常成功嘅效果。點解暴徒要剝奪其他人嘅發言權呢？難道呢啲就係叫做佢哋所講嘅言論自由？香港社會現時充斥住呢啲美化暴力，但係實際上係示弱請威嘅偽善。 最可悲嘅係暴徒鼓動入世未深嘅學生參與違法嘅行為。作為香港人，相信大家已經厭倦呢啲周而復始嘅暴力行為。我呼籲所有理性務實嘅市民企出嚟，切勿圍觀暴徒嘅犯法，因為佢哋會誤以為你哋支持緊佢哋。另外，我想喺呢度提醒大家，暴亂嘅現場係非常之危險。暴徒使用各種致命嘅武器去攻擊警務人員，暴打政見唔同嘅市民嘅情況越嚟越多。而喺破壞一啲公共服務設施嘅過程裏面呢，佢哋嘅行為亦都相當暴力，有機會誤傷無辜嘅市民。所以我喺度重申，呢啲暴徒襲擊嘅現場係非常之危險，絕對唔適宜大家逗留。而警方亦有責任盡快驅散佢哋同埋拘捕佢哋，防止現場嘅環境惡化，危及公共秩序嘅安全。現場瞬息間亦都可以由好平靜、好快變到非常之暴力。大家係必須要遠離呢啲地方。喺警方需要採取驅散嘅行動嘅時候呢，任何人都必須要離開。而職務上需要留喺現場採訪嘅記者，同樣需要遠離警方嘅推進防線，因為咁樣除咗會阻礙警務人員嘅執法之外，記者嘅處境亦都會非常危險。我哋見過2次暴力示威者係俾自己嘅汽油彈所燒傷，而記者企得咁近呢，亦都係非常之危險。仲有喺警方拘捕同驅散人群嘅時候，我哋經常見到一啲戴住頭盔、身穿反光背心，或者拉住一啲救護包，自稱係救護人員嘅人士逗留喺度。佢哋自稱係一啲民間急救隊。我哋明白到有啲人係有救急扶危嘅熱心，想立即對一啲受傷嘅人士作出治療。警方其實同大家一樣，都係將救急扶危擺喺第一位。當有人需要接受治療嘅時候，警方會盡快幫當事人召喚消防處嘅救護服務，或者喺現場由有啲基本急救知識嘅同事去處理。不過警方要強調，因為你哋嘅安全理由，當需要驅散人群嘅時候，無論你哋係所謂民間救護隊、社工、議員，甚至係在座記者一樣，都必須要遠離，因為現場非常危險。過去嘅星期六拘捕當中，當日我哋拘捕咗3名自稱救護員，而其中2人身上面我哋搜到雷射槍，而另1人就係冇帶身份證明文件。警方唔會阻撓任何受傷人士接受醫療或者急救人士嘅施援，除非係被捕人士。警方有絕對嘅責任確保被捕人士嘅安全，亦有嚴格嘅指引作出規範。有需要嘅時候，警方會要求救護協助，而我哋同事都有經過基本嘅急救訓練，可以即時施救。所以警方冇去做出違反人權嘅行為，相反係做咗一啲保障去確保被捕人獲得適切治療嘅行為。我哋明白到示威者可能擔心去醫院或者接受警方急救人員嘅治療之後會被捕，但我必須強調，生命比任何嘢都重要。警方係唔會為咗拘捕疑犯而去阻撓佢哋接受救援或者治療嘅機會，必定係以救人為優先。所以對於香港人權監察指責警方阻撓救護車及救護人員到場治療傷者，拒絕及時將受傷嘅被捕人士送院，我係完全唔同意。至於受傷嘅示威者唔敢去醫院求醫，我亦都想強調，如果係違法嘅，就有需要承擔法律嘅後果，唔能夠倒果為因，將責任推喺警方身上面。我重申，警方係會優先考慮受影響人士嘅醫療需要，唔會阻撓人道救援嘅行為。接住落嚟，我會將時間交俾江 Sir 講講過去週末警方行動作出一啲拘捕嘅情況。唔該，江 Sir。
好，唔該，謝 Sir。咁我首先講咗拘捕數字。喺上星期五9月20號，警方拘捕咗2名男子， 年齡係42同埋59歲，涉嫌喺元朗港鐵站進行非法集結。而喺星期六嘅行動裏面，警方係拘捕咗33人，包括27男6女，年齡介乎13至54歲。拘捕嘅罪名包括非法集結、藏有攻擊性武器、藏有工具可作非法用途、襲警、公眾地方行為不檢同埋侮辱國旗等等。而喺星期日嘅行動裏邊，警方一共拘捕咗47人，包括42男5女，年齡介乎14至64歲。罪名包括襲警、藏有工具可作非法用途、非法集結、公眾地方行為不檢、危險駕駛同埋侮辱國旗等等。我必須重申，公開同埋故意以焚燒、毀損、塗劃、玷污、踐踏等方式去侮辱國旗或者國徽係違法行為，可判入獄3年。警方絕不會姑息任何人進行污蔑國旗嘅違法行為，必定會嚴肅跟進。整體行動嘅拘捕數字，截至琴日嘅行動完成為止，我哋一共拘捕咗1556名人士，當中包括1261位男士同埋295位女士，年齡介乎12至83歲。而喺過去呢個週末嘅行動裏邊，警方總共有4名嘅警務人員因為行動而受傷，包括喺進行拘捕嘅時候被暴徒毆打，同埋俾一啲掉磚嘅人呢就掉中咗嘅。使用彈藥方面，星期5 9月20號警方並冇使用任何彈藥，而喺星期6 9月21號，警方共使用催淚彈32發、橡膠彈6發、布袋彈1發同埋海綿彈1發。而有關星期日9月22號使用嘅彈藥，我哋仍在點算當中。跟住我會進行一啲澄清。有謠言指警方喺星期六元朗區拘捕1名男子之後，拖咗佢入後巷並毆打佢，打到佢昏迷。我哋澄清，呢一個係一個非常嚴重而失實嘅指控。當時警方喺鳳攸北街推進期間，截停咗2名人士進行盤問，但係當時有大量嘅示威者喺附近叫囂，衝擊我哋警方嘅防線。為咗呢個搜查嘅安全同埋保護被搜查人士嘅私隱，於是乎我哋將呢2個人帶到附近嘅後巷進行搜身同埋調查工作。與此同時，喺街上有大量嘅示威者衝擊我哋嘅防線，襲擊我哋嘅警務人員。喺警告多次無效之後，警方施放胡椒噴劑驅散示威者。而過程中，我哋拘捕咗1名48歲嘅男子襲警。而喺網上邊所講話，我哋喺後巷打呢1名嘅被捕人士係不實嘅指控。當時呢3個人，包括2名被截停搜查嘅男子同埋呢位嘅被捕人呢，我哋喺後巷進行搜查。咁嗰2名人士被搜查之後呢，我哋發覺冇乜嘢可疑嘅地方，於是釋放咗佢。而嗰位被捕人亦都喺搜身之後呢，佢就聲稱不適，我哋將佢送院嘅。而送院期間佢係清醒嘅。而另外網上流傳嘅片段其實亦都未能夠清楚錄影得到當時發生事件嘅經過，亦冇展示事件嘅始末，所以未能完全反映當時嘅情況。而警方暫時係亦都未收到任何人士對於呢件事件作出投訴。第二樣我想講一講就係有流傳就話星期日有警員就假扮示威者喺一架警方嘅吉普車上邊去攞裝備。經過了解之後，我哋確定途中嘅係我哋嘅警務人員，而佢當時穿着嘅係我哋特別戰術小隊嘅制服。咁所以呢，嗰個指控係完全失實，並冇警員假扮示威者喺警車上邊攞嘢嘅。 另外有流傳就話警員喬裝暴徒喺葵芳港鐵站用伸縮警棍大肆破壞港鐵車站設施。我哋睇過相關圖片，亦都確認呢個指控係完全失實嘅。相中喺港鐵站裏邊大肆破壞嘅人，首先唔係我哋嘅警務人員。另外，我哋細心睇過嗰支嘅伸縮警棍，亦唔係我哋警方所用嘅裝備。我喺度要作出呼籲，非法管有呢啲伸縮警棍呢，係有機會干犯藏有攻擊性武器罪行嘅，最高係有機會被判罰3年嘅監禁。另外，我哋亦都睇到有一啲報道話有一名女子手持伸縮警棍喺旺角協助我哋嘅警員制服示威者，懷疑係喬裝嘅警員。我哋了解過相關嘅警區嘅調配，我哋確認呢一名嘅女子係我哋該警區嘅便裝人員，係便裝嘅刑偵人員。佢當時喺旺角警署附近正在執行職務，觀察現場嘅情況，以便該警區作適當嘅調配。而當警方進行清場行動嘅時候，因為喺附近有一啲事件發生，有我哋其他同事正在拘捕同埋制服其他嘅示威者，於是乎呢一名嘅便裝探員去隨即加入去幫手其他同事進行拘捕行動。而由於事態發展比較急速，咁當時佢亦都未有時間可以從佢嘅身上物品裏邊攞返嗰件嘅警察背心出嚟穿着，而亦都係當時情況相當混亂，所以呢，喺稍後時間，我哋亦都有其他同事去確認呢個女子呢，其實係我哋嘅警察同事嚟嘅。咁接住落嚟，我將時間交俾阿李 Sir。
咁我而家咧就同大家咧就係講翻喺星期六日嘅案嘅事件之後咧嘅一啲嘅法庭案件嘅方面嘅。咁就喺星期六同埋星期日分別喺屯門同埋沙田咧都有係侮辱國旗嘅案件嘅。咁我哋就拘捕咗2名人士嘅，其中咧喺屯門嗰度咧係一名13歲嘅女童，而喺沙田嗰度咧就係一個21歲嘅男子嚟嘅。咁其中嗰位13歲嘅女童呢，我哋今日呢已經喺下午嘅時候就喺屯門裁判法院提堂。至於另外位21歲嘅男子呢，係仍在呢係扣查之中嘅。咁喺星期六元朗嘅暴力事件入邊呢，我哋警方呢亦都拘捕咗一名25歲嘅男子嘅。當時呢，佢係藏有一啲疑似好似係日本嘅武士刀啊、軍刀啊、斧頭啊等嘅攻擊性武器嘅。咁咧就警方咧，我哋咧就係以呢個藏有攻擊性武器嘅罪名咧就控告咗佢嘅。而今日咧，我哋喺下午喺屯門嘅裁判法院入邊咧已經係提咗堂。至於喺星期六嘅晚上喺旺角嗰度咧，我哋警方咧發現咗一名咧係22歲嘅男子咧，身上咧係藏有一個嘅汽油彈嘅。咁我哋咧亦都喺今日下午嘅時候咧，就將呢位嘅人士咧就係送咗去西九龍裁判法院入邊提堂嘅。係控告以一條咧就係藏有呢個武器咧係嘅罪名咧就控告咗佢。另外喺禮拜六嘅下午喺屯門區嘅時候咧，就喺屯門嘅屯匯街入邊咧，就大概有100名嘅示威人士咧用雜物咧就堵路，阻塞咗當時嘅交通啦，同埋咧係衝擊我哋警方嘅防線嘅，同埋咧亦都係向我哋警方投擲一啲嘅雜物啊，同埋汽油彈等嘅。咁警方喺進行拘捕行動嘅時候咧，就拘捕咗一名19歲嘅男子嘅。咁今日咧，亦都喺粉嶺裁判法院入邊咧，就係暫控咗佢一條嘅暴動罪。咁除咗咧係介紹呢啲嘅案件之外咧，我都想咧就同大家咧就睇一睇咧，我哋喺以往呢2日入邊咧，就係揾到一啲係攻擊性嘅武器啊。咁其中一把嘅雨傘啦嚇。嗱，大家可以見到啦，咁呢把遮咧，佢本身咧係有一個咁嘅情況嘅嚇，即係話咧佢咧係經過改裝咗之後咧係可以咧去攻擊其他嘅人嘅，咁當然佢嘅目標就係攻擊我哋嘅警務人員啦。 呢啲咧，如果我哋根據咗我哋嘅公安條例係關於佢嗰個攻擊性武器入邊嚟講咧，呢一類咧就係話咧係經過改裝之後係可以成為一啲嘅襲擊人嘅武器嘅。嗱，除此之外咧，我估近期咧大家都會見到好多呢一類嘅汽油彈。當然，我哋檢獲翻嚟嘅時候咧，佢係入邊有一啲嘅助燃劑啦，同埋其他嘅液體咧，令到佢嘅威力咧係增加咗嘅。咁就佢哋而家佢一般呢啲嘅暴徒嘅運作咧，好多時候咧，佢係會透過其他人咧帶入咗佢哋嘅暴徒去活動嘅範圍入邊，然之後咧就會分開俾佢哋咁去使用嘅。嗱，我咧就想提出一樣嘢㗎嚇。如果藏有並非係使用啊，藏有呢啲咁嘅汽油彈咧，係俾我哋嘅同事咧係截獲嘅話咧，佢根本已經係藏有呢個攻擊性武器。咁當然，我哋亦都考慮緊咧喺刑事罪行條例第62條咧有一條更加嚴重嘅案件咧，就係話藏有一啲嘅物品咧係令到係製造一啲物件嘅損失嘅。咁呢個嘅罪行咧，最高監禁咧係可以去達到10年嘅。仲有一樣咧，就係如果你係使用呢樣嘅情況之下咧，係屬於咧我哋係叫做係縱火。縱火喺刑事罪行條例第60條入邊咧，佢最高嘅監禁咧係終身監禁嘅。咁我喺呢度咧就係想再警告呢啲嘅人士咧，切勿咧係去亂用呢啲咁嘅物品，因為呢啲咧係可以構成好嚴重嘅後果嘅嚇。就算係淨係咁樣使用，而係冇任何人傷到咧，亦都可以一個好高嘅監禁。好，或者 Sir。
好，我會做一個總結。過去3個月，香港社會咧見證住前所未有嘅亂局，暴力示威者騎劫咗市民同埋一啲和平遊行嘅自由，將整個香港推到岌岌可危嘅地步。過去週末咧，暴徒喺多區大肆縱火，破壞鐵路設施，意圖癱瘓機場嘅運作，喺多區擲汽油彈，襲擊無辜嘅市民。佢哋口中嘅光復香港，其實只係摧毀香港嘅基業，染黑東方之珠。我必須再次強調，任何人絕對唔能夠合理化或者英雄化任何破壞法治嘅行為。當一個文明社會面對暴力嘅時候，需要做嘅嘢就係用實際嘅行動拒絕暴力。我哋呼籲市民用行動同暴徒劃清界線，一齊譴責暴力。任何市民，無論你哋係咩身份或者專業都好，都應該制止暴力，挺身而出，唔好袖手旁觀，盡公民嘅責任，盡快報警。接住落嚟，我會用英文簡單講講頭先我哋嘅講詞。Hong Kong enter the 16th week of the protest. Over the weekend, rioters went on a rampage across the city, starting fires on the street, hurling petrol bombs, violently attacking innocent people, and inflicting mass property destruction. Some even desecrated national flags and attempt to snatch an officer's gun. All these acts will only push Hong Kong to the verge of a man-made disaster. On Saturday, a large number of radical protesters deviate from the approved route of public procession and wreak havoc in Tuen Mun and Yuen Long districts. Apart from building barricades on main roads to paralyze traffic, rioters smash up MTR facilities and destroy various public properties. What's worse, some even threw objects into the railway and misused the emergency facilities. Their acts indeed hamper the safety of the entire MTR system. We make this very clear: whatever ideals they claim they are fighting for do not justify the use of violence. This is simply reckless and ruthless violence. On multiple occasions, radical protesters remove national flags from poles before trampling, desecrating, and burning them. The police certainly do not tolerate such acts and will bring offenders to justice. The use of dangerous and sometimes deadly weapons by radical protesters is especially alarming. Bricks, metal marbles, slingshots, petrol bombs, knives, and even knives attached to umbrellas are among the dangerous weapons used. In Saturday night, rioters hurled petrol bombs at police vans in Yuen Long. Our officers lives were under great danger. To protect himself and his colleagues, one officer alight the van pulled out his surface revolvers to disperse the crowd. His use of force is totally justified and decisive. In another incident, tens of rioters attacked one of our officers with hard objects, hiking sticks, and umbrellas. One even attempted to grab his surface revolver. Certain online comments even teach people how to effectively snatch police guns. Can you imagine the consequence if a loaded firearm fell into the hands of these rioters? In any case, our officers are justified in using appropriate force to contain the situation. Moving on, another alarming that shows signs of escalating is the use of indiscriminate violence against innocent bystanders. Over the weekend, many rioters violently beat up people who hold different views, taking the law in their own hands. In Hong Lok Road, two middle-aged men had an argument with some rioters. Then a swarm of rioters surrounded the two victims and assaulted them with metal sticks. One female rioter even struck the victim's head with a folding chair. Almost around the same time in Castle Peak Road, some rioters suspected a man tore down some poster from a wall and beat him up harshly, leaving him with bloody injuries. What's worse, the rioters just fled after publicly shaming him. Nothing can glorify or justify this indiscriminate use of violence against innocent bystanders. We appeal to the victims of these assaults to come forward and make reports to the police. We are aware that many self-proclaimed first aiders in harmless or reflective vests gathering on protest sites. They claim to have various medical qualifications and were trying to render medical assistance to those in need during violent clashes. We certainly understand their passion for helping others. Saving lives is always the top priority of police. If situation warrants, our officer will arrange for medical attention from ambulance officers. However, we must emphasize, during a dispersal operation, even these self-proclaimed first aiders must leave the scene. Regardless of their occupations, outfits and roles, they must obey police instructions. We certainly disagree with the accusation made by the Hong Kong Human Rights Monitor that we are targeting first aiders. As long as the self-proclaimed first aiders do not commit any lawful acts, our officers have no reason to arrest them. If the injured person had already been arrested, we are fully responsible for his safety. Normally, our officers will call for an ambulance. In the meantime, our officers who are trained in first aid will also monitor their condition. We must emphasize during initial medical treatment, the injured people may have drastic change in condition. The issue of liability is crucial. We cannot let someone who claims to be a medic give medical assistance to an arrested person. That would be a highly irresponsible act. The police have very strict internal guidelines on the protection of arrested persons' safety and well-being. Saving life is of utmost importance, and our officers will do their utmost to protect the safety of arrested person. Now I'll give an update on arrested figures. On Friday, we arrested two males, aged 42 and 59 years old, for unlawful assembly in Yuen Long MTR station. On Saturday, we arrested 33 people, consisting 27 males and 6 females, aged between 13 and 54 years old. They were arrested for unlawful assembly, assaulting a police officer, disorderly conduct in a public place, and desecrating a national flag. On Sunday, we arrested 47 people, consisting 42 males and 5 females, aged between 14 and 64 years old. Their offenses include unlawful assembly, loitering, dangerous driving, theft, and desecrating a national flag. In conclusion, it's been 3 months in Hong Kong has been gripped by a spiral of violence. Peaceful protests have been hijacked by radical protesters to commit destructive acts like arson, property destruction, hurling of petrol bombs, and indiscriminate attack on innocent citizens. Ordinary citizens are constantly living in fear as a result of widespread violence. everyone in the society is a loser. I must emphasize no excuses, no propaganda can justify or glorify such acts of violence. We appeal to every member of the public to cut ties with all criminal elements and join us in condemning such violence acts. We all should stand up to stamp out violence right now. Thank you.
好，問題時間，第二行第一位，呢位女記者。
咁多位你好 K 寶㗎，想問翻
大聲
咧，
少少唔該，大聲少少唔該。
想問翻咧，其實咧喺尋晚嘅驅散行動入面啦，尤其是喺旺角嘅驅散行動入面啦，有冇即係頭先你都確認咗有一個係即係有個女仔都係你哋嘅警員嚟㗎嘛？咁但係因為我哋影到其實都至少有5個係即係蒙住面着住黑色衫嘅，咁想問下佢係咪都係你哋嘅同事嚟嘅咧？咁其實到底尋日嘅驅散行動入面係即係派咗幾多個警員係喬裝一啲嘅示威者咧？咁佢哋扮演嘅角色又係啲咩咧？因為現場都有啲人士就話即係有一啲嘅警員係甚至係扮一啲嘅即係喺現場急救嘅義工，咁有冇啲咁嘅事咧？咁同埋即係呢一啲嘅喬裝嘅即係示威者，佢係即係潛伏咗入邊有幾耐咧？第二就係想問翻頭先都有提過，就係話喺鳳攸北街就係話即係拉入後巷，就話咁就其實都有啲網上片段就影到係你哋有同事就踢咗佢哋一腳咁樣，咁即係頭先都澄清過就係話即係冇啲咁嘅事啦。咁但係當其時即係因為我相信你哋即係喺搜查嘅時候都應該有拍攝，會唔會話即係都公開翻當其時你哋影到嘅片嚟到去以正視聽咧？同埋即係見到嗰段片都係即係嗰個即係個警員都係踢咗佢一腳啦。咁當其時即係搜身嗰個係做咗啲乜嘢，要佢咁樣踢佢一腳咧？同埋最後想問翻，即係屯門搶警槍嗰度咧，即係點解當其時即係嗰位防暴警察會自己一個喺度做緊一啲驅散行動咧？同埋就係即係頭先都有提過，就係話即係如果即係會有呢一啲搶警槍嘅情況發生，會用翻相應嘅武力啦。即係都提到話後果自負。咁嗰個相應嘅武力會係啲乜嘢咧？會唔會係就係即係之前即係你哋有啲協會都話，即係可能係咪會即係開槍，即係開真槍嚟到去即係嚟到去還擊咧？唔該。
第一條咧，我陣間會邀請江 Sir 作答。咁第二條咧 ，I will pass the floor to Mr. Williams。第三條咧，我會交俾方 Sir 咧。好，唔該。
好。咁首先就住琴晚喺旺角警署附近嘅嗰個嘅場面啦嚇，咁就正如我頭先喺開場嘅時候已經澄清咗啦。咁嗰位嘅女士咧，就揸住伸縮警棍嗰個咧，就係我哋嘅旺角警區嘅便裝人員嚟嘅。而當時佢係負責一啲嘅觀察嘅工作，咁就去令到我哋警區嘅人員喺個調配方面咧，可以得到一啲嘅人流啊或者其他嘅資訊嘅。咁而你話我可以確認其實係有其他嘅便衣人員當時亦都喺現場工作嘅，係啦。咁但係有關人數又或者佢哋負責工作咧，咁由於喺個屬於一個行動嘅內容細節，我亦都唔喺呢度公開。咁就我諗我嘅答案係咁多，咁我就交俾我頭先亦都講咗啦，即係呢啲係牽涉我哋嗰個人數同埋嗰個調配係牽涉我哋行動內容啦，咁所以我喺度唔方便公開啦。Maybe I pass the floor to Mr. William.
Yes, I'm here to answer the question about the alleged assault inside the alleyway of Feng Yao North Street. Now, you mentioned a video in which it shows what appears to be an officer kicking a yellow object on the ground. Now, we don't know what that object is, but there are other videos that are more clear that show the entire incident. And there's no malpractice by the police whatsoever in the clear video. Now we see a
yellow object is obviously a man.
Yes, but
呢位記者，你可唔可以跟翻個規？而家係 K 寶問緊㗎，唔該呢位蘋果記者，你等而家係 K 寶問緊。
I am answering your question. Please let me answer your question.
I think you have to stop.
There are videos which show the entire incident where no assault resulted. Now, I've seen that video myself. Now, I've seen videos of other videos of people that have doctored the video to show police kicking people. The genuine online feed showed that there was no such assault. Now, there is a video online that shows that no assault occurred. We will ask the maker of the video you're referring to come forward and show us the original copy of that video, because any incident of police violence will be investigated.
We had that interview. He said that he.
我諗我哋繼續翻 K 部條問題。
Well, then, if you have an interviewee who said he witnessed it, please ask her to come forward or him to come forward, and we will interview them. It's very easy to make allegations when you don't have to come forward to verify that allegation, isn't it?
But no matter.
Yeah, I think we can continue to answer the number 3 question of K 部。
我個時間交俾阿方 Sir， 唔該。
好，唔該阿 Sir。咁我哋講一講關於呢一個搶警槍嘅問題啊。咁啊，剛才頭先記者都提及到咧，就係話我哋嘅同事咧，當其時何解咧係會自己一個出現咧？咁啊，其實就唔係嘅，其實係一個推進嘅過程期間咧，我哋都因為我哋警方咧都相當之咧重視呢一個搶警槍嘅事件，咁我哋都不停咧重複去翻看咧一啲事前事後嘅影片，咁我得知咧其實喺我哋嘅其中一個同事喺度進行推進嘅期間咧，咁就有人咧就從後咧就佢正在咧係進行一個拘捕，而進行呢個拘捕嘅期間，當佢嘗試緊咧去控制個被捕人嘅時候咧，有一名咧似乎我哋睇到咧，而且外籍人士咧就從後攬跌咗我哋嗰位同事，然之後咧就大批嘅暴力示威者咧就包圍過嚟，就佢哋嘅動作咧必然咧係希望可以喺嗰個過程當中咧就搶犯嘅。咁啊，因此咧，我哋同事倒地之後咧，咁啊受到不斷嘅襲擊啦。咁啊，與此同時咧，就有我哋睇到咧片段上面都睇到咧，就係話有其中一個暴力示威者咧，就從後咧，首先咧就想已經嘗試咧係搶咗我哋同事嘅一支長警棍啦。而另一個暴力示威者咧，再喺我哋同事右手邊度埋嚟咧，就嘗試搶佢嘅警槍嘅。呢個咧係個真實嘅案發嘅經過嚟嘅。咁至於頭先你就係話我哋如果有同事被搶咗警槍，我哋嘅武力會提升到咩程度呢？咁啊，亦都再講翻我哋之前有我哋警方嘅聯座級協會入邊都提及到，如果有呢一類型嘅事件發生，有暴力再進一步提升嘅説話呢，我哋嘅使用武力程度會去到邊呢？咁我記得我喺上個星期嘅記者會都講過，就我哋用咗汽油彈去做一個類比啊。如果大家覺得汽油彈都能夠令到我哋嘅身體令到我哋警員同事嘅身體咧有一個嚴重嘅傷害，咁我想再問多一次，就係話，如果有暴徒攞住我哋嘅警槍，你覺得嗰個可以造成嘅後果會係點呢？咁啊都一樣啦，即係嗰個道理一樣嘅。我哋係有一個相當之嚴格嘅指引去使用武力。是否你攞住警槍，我哋會即刻開槍呢？咁我哋一定係會根據當其時嘅情況咯。我哋希望能夠盡量制停一啲暴力嘅事件。咁但係根據我哋嘅內部指引，根據我哋警察通例，第一個首先需要考慮嘅第一個最重要嘅考慮就係話，我哋係要保障我哋自己同埋其他人嘅身體免受任何傷害。咁如果喺嗰個情況底下呢，再講多一次就係話，我哋必須咧使用呢一個相對嘅武力。使用武力呢係必然咧要考慮到必要性同埋相稱性。咁啊，我哋要視乎當其時嘅情況啦，當其時嘅環境究竟有咩威脅呢？我哋嘅同事係面對緊，咁從而去決定呢，究竟我哋嗰個時刻咧係應該會使用邊一個程度嘅武力。好嘛，唔該。咁佢之後都係會開真槍。我諗即係其實呢個問題都討論過多次啦。是否開真槍呢？唔係話有人攞咗我哋嘅警槍，我哋會即刻開真槍。佢攞咗我哋警槍，佢究竟佢跟住會點樣做呢？是否會對我哋擎槍呢？對住我哋擎槍嘅情況底下呢，我哋嘅身體是否有機會喺我哋同事當其時個判斷會係點樣呢？咁佢先會決定佢使用咩武力咯。
好，呢邊第一行最外邊嗰位。
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Waikit from CNA. I just want to follow up on the question of snatching of revolvers. We've seen videos, of course, of the protesters snatching revolvers and civilians beating up other civilians. But of course, I also have to mention that we've seen videos of police officers surrounding protesters and beating them up. Again, I don't know whether they're doctored, but these are videos that have been online. And also, reporters have also been pepper sprayed on the ground. Can I just ask, at this point, would the Hong Kong Police Force's position still be one of restraint? And what other criteria would you consider before elevating that response? And on the question of snatching of revolvers, given that there are so many different types of police officers on the ground, especially those civilian officers, how secure are the holsters? And for those officers who can bring their revolvers back home, do you allow them to bring, or rather, do you allow them to buy holsters? And how secure are they? My second question is on resources. We've seen recently how the airport stress test has resulted in large-scale operations, deployment of manpower and resources, and also large groups of civilians, some who describe them as pro-China, pro-government, also attacking pro-democracy protesters. Given these two new trends, when police officers have to now face these two opposing camps, it's potentially a three-cornered fight. And if these two new trends keep sustaining, moving forward, how can the police ensure that the manpower are efficiently made use of? My last question would be on members of public giving tip-offs. Since the WhatsApp hotlines were halted to date, how have members of public reached out to police force? Can you give me a sense of how many cases they've reported to you, and of which how many actually resulted in follow-up and enforcement actions? Thank you.
I'll invite Mr. Fong to answer the first question, and I'll answer the other two later.
Yep. Thank you, sir. As mentioned in some previous press conferences, and we have been saying that we have a set of very strict and stringent guidelines in relation to the use of force. And I would say we are certainly restrained in this regime, and we will continue to uphold this principle. So in terms of the tactical response, it always depends on the professional judgment of our police officers on the operational ground. And before deploying a specific tactics of using force, our frontline officers will always conduct risk assessment. And there are three factors that dictate their risk assessment. The first one would be the level of threat being faced by our police officers. And the second one would be how the officers perceive the threat. And finally, what level of force should be deployed by our police officers. And the guiding principle of using force is always the necessity and the proportionality. And our officers will only use the force which is strictly necessary and is incommensurate with the situation in order to achieve a lawful purpose. So in recent protests, as we can see, some violent protesters even use pistol-like objects, bows and arrows, slingshots, and petrol bombs, all sorts of lethal weapons, I would say. So given the escalating violence and deadlier weapons used by protesters, and our officers have been facing a lot more dangerous situation on the operational ground. But we have exercised restraint and deliberately avoid physical contact with protesters as far as possible. So once the situation is under control, the use of force will cease. So in relation to the snatching of equipment, including firearms from our police officers, thank you for bringing up this issue again. And yes, you are absolutely correct. The situation is actually quite alarming. And as we have repeatedly mentioned in previously, the violence or the illegal acts engaged by protesters nowadays were actually beyond the boundary. And that is something unacceptable in a civilized society. So, to set the record straight, and as a matter of fact, the possible offences resulting from the snatching of equipment or even firearms include snatching, robbery, assaulting a police officer, possession of arms and ammunition without a license. And amongst these offences, the most obvious one that would probably be committed by people snatching our equipment would be robbery, which carries a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. So we strongly condemn the violent acts of protesters, and we would like to reiterate that we have zero tolerance for violence and will diligently enforce the law for public safety and public order. So in relation to how to prevent our equipment from being snatched, our officers, whether newly recruited or serving, receive rigorous training on how to use different levels of force and protect their equipment, such as firearms. And we have been issuing or providing the best equipment to our officers, and therefore it's not necessary for our officers to purchase their own holsters. So I hope my answers and explanation are to your satisfaction. Thank you.
For your question, second question about the sustainability of our manpower and resources, based on the changing trend and tactics being used by the protesters, I'll say the Hong Kong Police Force management certainly values the sustainability of manpower and resources. And we have basically made a lot of respective arrangement on the allocation of manpower and resources in response to the ongoing unrest since June this year. For example, basically our management has made an adjustment to our shift patterns of our officers. A lot of our officers have to work 12 hours shift now. In the past, it's only 9 hours. Also, we make good use of our auxiliary police officers. They're deployed in the front lines to assist our officers, like they did a lot of daily patrol duties or crowd management duties. And definitely, the turnout rate of our auxiliary police officers was quite high in the last few months. And we can see an increasing number of applications received from auxiliary police officers, quite significantly, which indicates basically that's the commitment of our members of the public from different walks of life in supporting the force in restoring the public order in Hong Kong. And lastly, we will deploy new tactics and new equipment to upgrade our competency in controlling the situations. But we are up against lawlessness. I would say if majority of the Hong Kong population do not obey the law, basically I'm sure that no police in the world can deal with that situation. And for your third question about the how the general public can reach out to police to tip off those violent cases, although the WhatsApp hotlines or services has been hooked, and definitely for urgent cases, we always appeal to the members of the public to call 999 in Hong Kong. Our control center will deploy appropriate manpower to deal with the urgent situation. For non-urgent matters, basically they feel free to make use of our e-report room as well, e-report center, and they can make non-urgent information by sending what we call the crime information form on our internet. Our intelligence unit will vet and prioritize those information before sending out the intelligence to crime teams for follow-up. Definitely, although the suspension of the WhatsApp hotlines will continue to explore new platforms to receive crime information from the public. But I'm sorry that I cannot tell you how many of those reports are genuine and what are we going to develop on those information we received in the past. Thank you.
下位，第三行後邊間條3位男士。
第一步嘅想問翻就係so far 到而家係關於侮辱國旗嗰度咧，其實除咗頭先阿李 Sir 講話拉咗嗰2位人士之外，係到而家係總共拘捕咗幾多係涉及侮辱國旗啦？另外就係呢1500幾個被捕人士當中，有幾多個係已經作出咗起訴嘅咧？第二就係關於呢啲即係呢啲網民講話喺啲叫做私了嘅一啲襲擊事件，其實你警方係會點樣跟進去將呢啲人去繩之於法咧？第三就係想問翻，最近係有好多傳聞就話將一啲即係自殺嘅案件就話係同新屋嶺啊或者太子站係有關嘅，咁警方可唔可以澄清下，即係到底係咪有啲即係咁嘅事發生咧？係唔該。
我諗第1同第3題我都交俾阿江 Sir 作答，咁一陣間之後第2條我交俾阿李 Sir 答。OK。係。
咁首先答咗第一條有關呢一個嘅侮辱國旗啦，咁俾少時間我。咁其實就根據我手頭嘅資料咧，就由行動由6月9號至今咧，咁總共就我哋而家手頭上有6宗有9宗嘅侮辱國旗嘅案件係調查當中嘅，係啦，而裏邊咧係有5宗嘅案件咧，係啦，我哋係已經作出咗拘捕嘅，係啦，咁包括咗就係8月初喺尖沙咀5支旗杆嗰個案件啦。咁亦都包括咗9月初喺東涌游泳池嗰個案件啦，亦都係包括咗9月初喺呢一個嘅政府總部嗰個案件嘅。咁連埋頭先喺嗰個開場簡介裏邊，我所講喺呢個屯門同埋沙田喺9月21同22號嗰2宗案件，我哋總共係拘捕咗5個人士嘅。咁其他案件我哋仍然係調查當中。 咁啊，跟住有關你提及嘅一啲自殺案件啦，咁係啦，咁其實警方都相當之關注嘅，所以你哋見到我哋喺呢一個嘅記者會裏邊，其實都不時係作出唔同嘅澄清。而另外，我哋亦都透過新聞室有唔同嘅一啲嘅新聞稿，或者我哋亦都係解答過唔同嘅傳媒機構嘅問題嘅，係啦。咁其實我喺度係可以好清楚咁樣講，喺呢個新屋嶺同埋喺8月31號太子港鐵站嗰度呢，係啦，我哋記錄裏邊係冇任何死亡案件嘅。而呢一樣嘢呢，尤其係太子港鐵站嗰方面呢，其實消防處啦同埋呢一個嘅醫管局嗰度呢，亦都係清楚咁作出咗澄清同交代。咁而我哋喺呢度之前作出嘅澄清呢，其實我哋亦都好清晰咁樣講，我哋唔明白造謠者嘅目的係乜嘢。咁其實你話如果真係有人死咗咁大件事嘅話呢，係啦，咁就唔係話就咁喺網上邊作出一啲子虛烏有嘅謠傳呢，就可以成事嘅。而我相信其實大部分嘅理性嘅市民其實都好清楚。咁而我哋都有好詳細咁檢視過一啲失蹤人口報告嘅，當中係冇任何失蹤人口報告係有關一啲公眾活動，係啦。咁所以其實我哋已經盡力去作出澄清，係啦。咁我亦都唔明白點解仲有人係唔知佢係背後有啲乜嘢嘅動機，係繼續去發放相關嘅謠傳。咁所以我借呢度再講多一次，喺8月30號太子港鐵站嗰度係冇任何嘅死亡個案，係啦。咁呢樣嘢係醫管局同埋消防處方面亦都有肯定咗我哋呢個說法嘅。咁剩翻落嘅時間，我就交翻俾李 Sir。
係。或者我答我嗰個題目之前呢，我想補充少少咧，就關於係一啲失蹤人口啊，或者係自殺案件入邊，我哋警方一般嘅調查方式係點？如果係一個自殺案件嘅話呢，我哋會即場係派一啲嘅同事，會係一啲巡邏小隊啦。如果有需要嘅話呢，我哋會有刑偵嘅同事呢，就去現場呢，就去檢視一下究竟有冇任何可疑嘅情況嘅。第二呢，就係話，如果係失蹤人口嘅案件嘅時候呢，我哋會交由係總區嘅失蹤人口科去處理嘅。到某一段嘅時候呢，佢覺得佢想睇清楚啲個案件有冇可疑嘅話呢，亦都會轉交俾當區嘅總區重案組呢，就去審視嘅。所以咧，其實我哋警方對依類嘅案件咧係相當謹慎去睇嘅，而將佢聯繫埋一啲被指稱係有死亡嘅案件咧，我覺得對我哋係好唔公平嘅。好啦，或者講翻我哋另外嗰個題目咧，就係關於係暴徒咧係一班人去攻擊一啲持不同意見嘅人士嘅調查。嗱，咁呢啲嘅案件呢，我哋接獲咗之後呢，我哋係會交由我哋嘅重案組嘅同事去處理嘅，同一般嘅襲擊案件呢係無異嘅。但係呢，我想同大家呢就係分享一下我以往調查呢啲案件嘅情況嚇。第一呢，就係話呢，呢啲多人去襲擊同一個人士嘅案件呢，好多時候呢係會越嚟越激烈嘅。激烈到咩階段呢？有啲甚至可能會引致係一啲嘅命案嘅發生。第二樣嘢，我想提出一樣嘢嘅話呢，如果呢一班人去引致一個人有嚴重嘅受傷，或者有生命上嘅問題嘅話呢，佢哋每一個人都係負同一樣嘅責任，唔係話我嗰個細腳啲，佢嗰個大拳啲係咁樣分法嘅。所以呢，我好希望大家要好理性去處理自己一啲意見嘅問題，絕對唔應該係訴諸暴力，尤其是如果喺一啲咁大規模嘅入邊呢，可能嘅後果係十分之嚴重。好，唔該晒。
後邊嗰位港台，
係你好，香港電台。想問翻咧，即係啱啱講翻，即係嗰個涉嫌使用私刑嗰度啦。咁即係Mr. Williams 就話覺得係 yellow object，咁可唔可以即係解釋下警方係咪同意你哋睇到嗰條片嗰個黃色嘅唔係一個人咧，定係即係究竟可唔可以再解釋下踢咗一腳嗰個係踢咗落去，即係你哋所知係踢咗落去邊度啦？咁同埋話有啲更加清晰嘅片段，可唔可以你哋會唔會承諾都即係俾市民睇到啦？即係如果你哋反正都有機會播片嘅話，會唔會播出呢條即係你哋話可以交代成件事件始末嘅短片咧？另外就係想問，即係過去週末即係見到有啲警方拘捕人嘅情況咧，就 例如你哋啱啱所講拉咗啲義務嘅急救員啦，咁另外喺機場亦都拉過一啲因為話身上袋多過1張八達通嘅，咁亦都拉過一啲係有示威標語喺身嘅人。咁呢啲係咪一啲即係無差別嘅濫捕咧？即係其實如果拎一張標語喺身，即都唔算係犯法啦。咁而另外喺太子嘅一個行動啦，就被捕嘅男人就問可唔可以借個盾嚟遮住啦，咁但係警方就拒絕。咁但係之前北角咧，其實就可以借到個盾嚟遮住塊面啦。咁而旺角嗰位即係太子嗰位男子仲唔俾佢講自己個名，咁即係呢啲待遇係咪就又變翻係一個有差別嘅待遇咧？咁最後就係想問翻關於即係啱啱講話即係要個記者上返行人路嗰度呢個標準，同埋即係有時喺現場都聽到話要企開10米距離嗰個標準係點樣定出嚟嘅咧？其實以往即係我哋自己喺現場採訪前1-2個月，其實都冇乜聽過呢啲説法。即係呢個標準係咪新定出嚟，同埋點樣制定呢個準則嘅咧？即係點解會突然間多咗呢個限制嘅咧？唔該。
I'll first invite Mr. Williams to answer the first questions. 第2同第3條啦，就係其實你問咗4條嘅。咁急救員同太子我已經交俾江 Sir 答。最後記者條雖然係第4條，因為咧我諗大家都想知嘅，所以我一陣間就會答埋呢一條。一陣間咁樣分。Mr. Williams.
Yes. When I said it was an object, my next phrase was going to be, the video is very out of focus, and it could have been an object, a person, a bag, or a vest. Before I was interrupted. The other video is also online, and I'm sure you can search it for yourself. The police will try to locate the makers of these videos to verify the authenticity of both videos. So we request the makers of the video to come forward to assist our inquiries. That's it. Thank you.
係，咁就住第2條問題啦。其實我諗我哋警方喺個行動當中作出拘捕咧，其實我哋唔係去睇正如頭先我哋喺開場嗰個嘅簡介裏邊講咗，就係我哋唔係去睇任何人嘅佢嘅身份、佢嘅角色，係啦。其實我哋全部都係睇翻當時我哋究竟搜查到啲乜嘢咧。個證據係點樣咧？同埋當時嗰個情況、嗰個前因即係後果，或者當時嘅背景情況係點樣係啦。譬如我哋喺佢哋身上邊揾到一啲工具出嚟，係啦。我哋都要睇翻我當時其實我現場係咪一個即係啱啱進行咗一個叫做非法集結咧？係啦，甚至乎會唔會係現場會有一啲嘅暴力事件發生過？於是乎我哋先至可以再從呢個情況裏邊作出一個嘅判斷，究竟佢會唔會係譬如干犯咗藏有攻擊性武器啊，又或者所謂藏有工具可作非法用途嘅，係啦。我呢度咧就唔作個別案件嘅一個嘅分析啦，係啦。即係總之整體嚟講咧，就係嗰個人嘅角色同埋佢嘅打扮，其實可能係個考慮其中一樣。但係其實我哋作出拘捕嘅時候，我哋去即係考慮嘅其實係一籃子嘅因素啦，係啦。正如我頭先所講，當時事件嘅背景啦，又或者我哋當時同呢位被捕人士嘅現場嗰個嘅調查嘅時候，佢點樣同我哋講啦，係啦。但係呢啲內容我亦都唔方便喺呢度即係詳細去講得太多，係啦。有關你講喺呢個太子，琴日我哋作出拘捕嘅時候，有人問過我哋借盾咧，我會話呢個咧就可能牽涉嗰個內容係比較仔細一啲，我暫時就未有資料喺手度嘅，係啦，唔需要啦。係啦，或者我翻去再了解咗。我諗唔係嗱，我會咁樣講咧。你而家俾我睇咗咧，我又冇機會去問翻當時嘅同事究竟發生啲乜嘢咧。係啦，我會話其實對我、對你或者對同事或者對個被捕人亦都唔公平嘅。係啦，我諗呢一樣嘢，我要翻去再咧搜查翻資料之後咧，我再回答。我跟住我交俾阿謝 Sir。
即係個觀感係咪唔好啊？你北角又可以借到出去，咁太子又
其實會唔會係你哋即係淨係？
我諗等阿 Sir 答埋容後嗰啲題目好嘛？即係所以繼續唔該。
係啦，我就住你頭先第4條問題咧，我都想即係借呢個機會咧做即係喺度想講講。的而且確咧，你會見到近排咧，可能喺現場咧你哋各位同埋我哋嘅同事咧喺現場 就住一啲距離嘅問題咧，係事實係多咗一啲大家嘅唔理解，或者甚至係一啲爭拗。咁我諗我重新喺度講清楚就係、我諗好清晰，大家亦都唔可以即係抹殺嘅就係、我諗香港而家嘅情況同過去咁耐以嚟咧係一個好大轉變。我哋唔係講緊呢一刻外面發生嘅一個刑事罪案或者一單交通意外，我哋而家係講緊喺一啲週末或者夜晚發生嘅一啲暴亂嘅情況。咁所以咧呢啲情況同一般大家平時喺工作時間同我哋嘅配合有唔同呢，我可以同大家講咧，呢個係會發生嘅。個原因就係因為喺呢啲混亂嘅情況裏面呢，係非常之危險嘅。咁第二樣嘢呢，就係我諗近日呢，其實大家都好清晰呢，就係其實警察喺作出拘捕或者推進嘅時候呢，係經常受到一啲暴力嘅人士去襲擊，甚至係搶犯。我諗用琴日搶槍個例子好清楚，其實係當有警務人員一作拘捕嘅時候呢，其實係會有好多嘅暴徒呢係圍埋去圍毆，甚至係琴日係嘗試搶槍。咁喺好多唔同嘅情況之下呢，我哋係會見到除咗示威者以外呢，有部分嘅傳媒或者自稱嘅救護員呢，佢哋亦都係會企到好埋。咁同時喺以往唔會咁多時間受到咁近距離嘅襲擊或者搶犯嘅情形下，咁當然對大家嗰個距離嘅要求梗係冇咁高啦。咁但係原來發覺而家係會俾人打同會俾人搶犯嘅，咁所以佢自然希望有一個遠啲嘅距離去作出人身嘅保護，呢個都亦都係合情合理。咁最後一樣嘢咧，我諗我都要必須要喺度澄清咧，就係我再一次澄清喺度，我從來冇講過真正嘅記者或者專業嘅記者咧係會作出一啲違法或者搶犯嘅行為。我仍然聽到好多人咧喺度對我哋作出呢個指控。我再重申係冇講過專業或者真正嘅記者係會做呢啲嘢嘅。咁但係咧，我哋係見到好多有心人，佢哋係會攞記者作為一啲掩護，又或者用記者嘅身份作一啲掩飾。我重申，我都係講緊呢一句嘅啫。咁即係話咩呢？即係話其實咧好多時咧，記者企到好埋嘅時候咧，一啲暴徒咧係會攞你哋嚟做一個掩護。喺啱啱嘅週末裏面，亦都有好多片段見到咧，喺記者群裏面突然間會有人跳起，或者喺後面掟嘢出嚟嘅。掩飾嘅意思咧就係佢嘅裝扮到好似記者，令到我哋嗰個戒心減低。到我哋真係嘗試埋去問佢嘅時候，佢會走，或者發覺解釋唔到。咁喺呢啲好多嘅事件，週末或者過去幾個星期咧，其實都見到。咁種種呢啲原因咧，即係讓我解釋咧，就係點解我哋即係喺一啲咁暴力同混亂嘅時候咧，可能同大家記者喺一般同警察嘅接觸裏面咧，好似點解把尺唔同咗咁咧？咁希望大家明白。記者喺過去呢幾個星期咧，我諗我喺直播或者喺唔同嘅報道都見到，其實你哋都受示威者咧嘅汽油彈或者磚頭咧掟中唔少次。咁我諗即係我再一次呼籲，其實大家記者或者之前講嗰啲自稱救護員都好，其實你哋自己嘅人身安全咧，我哋都係好重視。咁避免我哋有任何嘅一啲誤會，或者喺我哋行動嘅時候一啲冇必要嘅身體接觸咧，我再一次呼籲大家喺一啲現場嘅時候一定要照顧自己嘅安全，唔好喺警察行動嘅期間企得太埋。唔該。最後兩題得啦。
第三行男士，呢位男士。
新華社。剛才我們看到了至少2段錄像是有這個市民被毆打的。好，剛才我們看到了至少2段錄像是關於這個市民被人毆打的場面。其中一段呢是一位老者被一個人用拳頭擊打頭部，打了很多拳。後來呢，他又有一個女子上來用鐵架子打他的腦袋。第二段錄像也是能夠清晰地看到，有人在毆打一個人。我想問的是，就是這幾位能夠從錄像上很明顯地看清他們的身形的人，是否已經被警方拘捕？那麼如果有人因為這個打人被拘捕的話，警方將以什麼樣的罪名來 控诉他们、控告他们，那么这些罪名可以判的最高刑期是什么？第二个问题是关于这个抢枪的事情。我们看到有人试图抢警察的枪，但是没有成功。我想知道，就是一线警察在他的这个操作条例里面，是否很清楚地规定了，在遇到有人抢他的枪的时候，他可以采取什么样的行动？如果有人把警察的枪抢到了手里，警察可以采取什么样的行动去应对这种情况？那么，是否警察可以在不经警告的情况下，对拿到槍的人開槍，以防止他對警察或者對其他人造成傷害。謝謝。
第一條我交俾阿李 Sir， 咁啊第二條應該我請阿方 Sir 作答。唔該。
頭先上述嗰單嘅案件呢，而家呢係由呢個新界北總區重案組呢係積極跟進中嘅。咁呢就暫時呢就未有呢個嘅拘捕嘅人士嘅。如果係呢個案件係我哋會以咩方向去做呢？就我哋係會以呢個刑事罪行以呢個嘅人身侵害條例，即係221條入邊嘅其中嘅第17條，就係意圖呢係造成身體嚴重傷害嘅案件去做嘅去方向去調查嘅。而呢一個最高嘅刑罰呢係可以去到終身監禁。
好，唔該阿 Sir。咁其實頭先咧答另一位記者嘅時候咧，都有提及到啦。當我哋嘅同事受到即係有人搶槍嘅時候咧，佢可以點樣處理？咁其實咧，我哋提供到俾我哋所有警務人員嘅訓練，不論係新入職，又或者係在職嘅持續訓練咧，其實咧就防搶槍咧都有一個相應嘅訓練嘅。咁我哋希望咧，我哋可以透過我哋嘅連續呢一個訓練嘅模式咧，令到我哋同事咧喺佢哋日常執行職務嘅時候咧，可以避免到咧佢哋嘅警槍被搶。咁同埋咧就係話，我哋咧都有不時去檢討我哋嘅裝備啦，有為我哋嘅人員咧提供一個最適合嘅裝備，咁以防咧佢哋嘅警槍或者其他裝備咧，咁啊受到一個外來嘅干擾嘅。咁至於就係話喺武力使用方面啦，如果我哋真係有同事佢哋嘅警槍被搶嘅時候咧，咁我哋應該可以點樣處理咧？是否就係話一概而論警槍被搶，咁我哋就會開槍咧？咁我覺得咧就即係都講過好多次啦，呢個並非一個即係可以一刀切咁樣講嘅，因為咧其實整件事咧大家都係睇緊我哋警隊嘅武力使用嘅守則，咁我哋都重複過好多次，就係話我哋有一個好嚴格嘅武力使用嘅守則，就係話我哋使用武力咧必須咧係要考慮呢一個必要性同埋相稱性。咁究竟就係話我哋會使用何種武力去制服一啲搶警槍嘅暴力示威者或者暴力人士呢？就係話我哋嘅同事會根據佢哋嘅專業判斷啦，喺現場咧去作出衡量，究竟佢哋可以透過乜嘢方式去指示搶警槍嘅人呢？放低翻支槍。咁但係問題就係話喺根據我哋警察通例呢，其中一項如何可以使用警槍，頭先都再講過，就係話係保護任何人，包括自己咧身體免受到一個嚴重嘅傷害。如果我哋嘅同事係發現到咧自己身體咧係將會受到嚴重傷害嘅説話咧，我哋自然就要將我哋嘅武力使用嘅層次提升，呢個咧係理所當然嘅。咁另外就係話都想再頭先英文嗰度嘅對答都提及到咧，就係話究竟搶警槍佢嘅罰則係啲咩咧？咁啊本身喺香港法例入邊咧就冇搶警槍呢個罪名嘅。咁但係其實咧一啲有可能因為搶警槍而引致嘅罪行咧，當中包括搶嘢啦、行劫啦、襲警同埋咧呢個非法管有槍械或者彈藥嘅。而頭先即係我哋，既然我哋用得個搶字啦，都其實同搶劫都有一定嘅關係。干犯呢一個搶劫嘅罪行咧，係相當之嚴重嘅罪行嚟嘅。佢嘅最高嘅判刑咧係可以去到終身監禁。咁我哋強烈譴責呢一啲意圖搶警槍嘅暴力示威者。我哋希望咧呢啲事情唔會再喺香港發生。好嘛？唔該。
同埋我諗咧，我補充少少咧，其實喺武力使用方面咧，其實第一樣嘢就係嗰刻嗰件事發生，例如你話搶警槍，究竟對嗰刻嘅情況產生咗一啲乜嘢嘅危險？ 第二就係對於嗰個同事去決定使用咩武力嘅時候，佢自己自身感覺佢受緊一啲乜嘢嘅危險，佢就會決定用咩。咁我諗任何嘅武力使用咧，都講緊就係有個必要性同埋個相稱性。你覺得如果我哋嘅同事一支係已經有子彈嘅槍，喺一個咁危險嘅情況下，俾人攞咗，其實去使用武力去制止佢個必要性大唔大呢？咁第二就係、如果佢攞咗一支槍，呢一支槍係一支致命嘅武器嘅時候，咁我哋嘅相稱性係應該用乜嘢去制止佢攞住呢支槍？咁我諗咧，呢啲都係當刻個警務人員要喺現場作出嘅考慮。咁並不能就咁講一件事咧，我哋就即係妄下判斷。咁但係同時係必定會喺現場作出頭先我所講嘅一啲考慮。
好，最後一題，第二行間條3個位。唔係問你，唔會問你，我問第二行間條3個位。唔該，唔該，蘋果記者，你跟翻個規矩啊嘛，我點咗係後邊第二行間條3。
嗰陣時仲係不反對通知書期間嘅，星期6嘅時候。
後邊間條3位，唔該問你講出你嘅代表傳媒。
你好，我係 CMP 啊。So I would like to ask if how can the police guarantee the safety of reporters and first aiders at the scene if you're asking them to? I know you said, oh, we should stand further away from the police when they're doing dispersal operations, but on Sunday, one of our colleagues was hit by a police baton by a riot police officer, and he said he was standing very far away, and he was clearly dressed as a reporter. He had a camera, and he was wearing his press vest. So how do you guarantee that? And other reporters have also reported that they've been either pepper sprayed or, in other ways, injured by police officers on the job. So how do you guarantee that when we are out there, we can be safe and not be, assaulted by police officers? And the other question is regarding the video of the man being kicked in the back alley. If you say that it might have been an object and not a man, what kind of threat did the object pose that you needed more than, say, 5 police officers surrounding that object? And yes.
May I invite Mr. Vasco to answer the second one first?
The fact is, there's 3 people taken to the back alley, into that alley, okay? 2 were brought in for inquiries. The 3rd man was the one wearing a yellow shirt, okay? He was brought in afterwards for having assaulted police at the cordon line, okay? After inquiries, the first 2 were released because nothing was untoward. The 3rd one was searched in the alley. Now you say, why were there so many people, so many police in that alley? Well, that was corresponding to the number of protesters, the rioters that were on the streets that day. Outside on Fongyao North Street, there were over 100 people there. And the police had retreated into that alley. So that's why they were there. Now, the reason I said it was an object is because the video is very unfocused. When I first looked at it, I couldn't identify what that was. I had to make inquiries to see what clothing the 3 persons taken to the alley were wearing to try to identify if it was a person. So that is why I said it might be an object. And the very fact that I saw another video which had no assault in it at all would suggest that one of these 2 videos is doctored. They can't both be true, can they? Can they? They can't, right? So obviously one of them is doctored. Now, knowing you're being videoed, do you think any police officer would be that stupid to assault someone under detention? I don't think so. But of course, we will investigate this. And anybody saying that they know the maker of these videos, please ask them to come forward. We're more than interested in investigating this, because this tarnishes the image of the Hong Kong police. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
For the second question, I'll try to answer that in 2 parts. First, about the incident. I think you're talking about the incident at around 18,000 in Sati Way. And our officers came under the attack of bricks by rioters. And these necessitate our use of force at that moment. And our officers then conduct a dispersal operations with tear gas and rubber baton rounds being used at that moment. Multiple units included in that operation, including the Special Tactical Contingents and Emergency Unit, were involved in that operations. We did some fact check, but there have not been any reports of baton being used. But I need to do further investigations. But since these are very strong allegations, and we'll take it very seriously, and we'll look into that case, and for your staff being alleged that he was attacked in that incident, they can make use of well-established capo mechanisms, and he can make their complaint. While for the general advice for reporters in that similar situations, we must emphasize that police do not target reporters intentionally. And basically all our officers do not have bad intentions against reporters. And I can advise that no matter reporters or self-proclaimed medics do not come into direct contact or with close contact with police officers. And I'll say in the current environment, basically all our officers were constantly on very heightened alert while on duties because they have been attacked by the radical protester very frequently. And our top priority in that kind of situation is to control the situation and stop the violence. And while we respect the journalism and the freedom of press, but we must first ensure the safety of our officers as well as all the people in that kind of life or death situations. My advice is to keep a safe distance from those police officers who are in the operation mode when they are dispersing the crowds or they are making the arrest.
今日記者會完畢，多謝各位。不如咁樣啊嘛，舉。
Because we have the video right here, and you said that.
It's on Facebook.
But it is opposite.
It's on Facebook. I saw it on Facebook about 30 minutes ago.
我諗咁啦，阿 Sir 話可以答多一條，我哋舉手睇下邊個答多一條好嘛？咁啊，後邊商台係咪嗰個係？
阿 Sir 你好啊，想請問翻，咪開咗咪？我想問，想請問咧，即係都見到咧，其實近嚟即係唔同政見即係襲擊嘅人咧，其實可能個案件越嚟越多啦，但係都好明顯見到其實係呢一個月先會發生得咁多。之前6月、7月嘅時候都冇見到咁多呢啲，即係本身可能係口角，而家已經係演變到去襲擊。會唔會覺得係因為警方咧喺處理唔同政見人士即係有爭執嘅案件嘅時候，例如好似之前喺德福廣場，即係可能淨係拉咗年輕嘅人啦，但係就冇拉到去一啲即係其他即係比較年長啊或者係中年嘅人士，令到即係示威者有呢個私了嘅心態去產生咧？會唔會覺得如果你當初喺拘捕嘅行動嘅時候，如果係即係劃一嗰個即係準則嘅時候，就唔會發生近期咁多襲擊嘅案件咧？另外想問翻即係一啲關於 related 嘅嘢嘅，就係即係例如好似8月5號即係三罷集會之後，元朗同埋北角都曾經發生即係一啲傷人案，喺荃灣甚至係有人係即係持刀斬人。咁例如呢一啲嘅案件，咁有冇拉到任何人咧？其實直至而家已經係2個月啦，就嚟。同埋想問翻，即係頭先所講話，即係元朗私刑，即係所謂私刑啦，即係警員喺暗角嗰度，即係可能係有懷疑係打嗰個即係着住黃色背心嗰個人。其實嗰個人當時係做咗乜嘢？係去有個襲警嘅一個即係嫌疑咧？係真係做過啲乜嘢咧？定係純粹係用口去鬧警員就已經係構成咗襲警咧？同埋即係頭先有講過，就係話即係可能警員唔即係佢警方啦，覺得你哋唔會係一個即係光天化日咁樣喺傳媒影到嘅情況下襲擊，咁但係其實七警案都已經係見到係即係有個明顯嘅案例啦。咁但係點解你哋會咁好確實咁樣話，即係呢一刻係冇做過呢啲嘢咧？唔該。
第2條關於8，你講緊應該係之前發生荃灣、元朗、北角幾個案件，我陣間交俾阿江 Sir 睇下有冇而家嘅資料喺手。 咁啊，跟住I'll pass the floor to Mr. Williams to handle the third question first.
Well, the individual that was brought into the alley was arrested for assaulting police. Now, what occurred was when the first two, as I mentioned before, were intercepted for inquiries, they were brought into the alley. When they were brought into the alley, a check line was formed at the entrance of the alleyway. Protesters, radical protesters, charged that process line. During that protest, those radical protesters, one of them, the man that was subsequently arrested for assaulting police, had pushed an officer several times, knocked him to the ground, and when the arrest was declared, he bit the officer in the right hand. He was then brought into the alleyway. That is why he was arrested, not for shouting slogans. He was arrested because he assaulted a police officer. Now, why do I say we're so certain? We're not certain. That's why we're asking. There are two videos online. Two videos showing completely different things. Both can't be genuine. But the question I ask is, do you think in this day and age, knowing full well the video cameras everywhere, that any police officer would be so stupid to assault anybody in public?
Yeah, 5 years ago.
5 years ago, yes. Not now. Well,
And they were shining bright lights preventing us from filming them.
there are videos everywhere. There are videos everywhere.
Mr. Wheeler, I think
This is the point. So the videos have to be verified, correct? You say you know the witness that made that video. Is that not correct? Please ask them to come forward.
We have the witness, and then you have to show us.
我諗咁樣啦，好嘛？
Obviously said
咁啊，
there's
因
no
為
such assault.
There is. Show us that we
我諗咁樣啦，好嘛？
true, right?
Mr. William，我哋等阿 Sir 答埋容後嗰啲部分，因為已經不斷再答咗好多次呢一條題目已經係。
我諗我而家交個時間俾阿江 Sir 答另外兩條。
係。咁我首先答咗第一條問題先啦。咁呢個其實係我諗我哋警方係唔樂意，亦都係我相信公眾亦都唔想見到嘅情況嚟嘅，係啦。就係其實就喺個社會裏邊係籠罩咗一個嘅漠視法紀嘅一個氣氛。係啦，即係包括係無論係喺港鐵站去破壞公物也好，又或者係喺街裏邊，因為大家唔同嘅意見而互毆啊，甚至乎可能係圍毆都好。咁其實呢啲係我哋亦都係唔想見到嘅，係。咁你話究竟我哋嘅拘捕準則咧，其實我哋喺度重複咗好多次，係啦。咁而喺我哋拘捕咗人士裏邊，其實亦都係包括咗各行各業啊，亦都係包括咗唔同政見嘅人喺裏邊，係。咁而我哋都喺度再重複一次啦。咁其實喺好多情況底下，點解我哋未能作出即時拘捕呢？咁即係其實嘅事件可以係包括你哋頭先所講嘅一啲喺北角或者荃灣嘅事件啊，亦都可以係包括7月1號喺立法會大肆破壞嘅事件。咁其實林林總總，我哋都係有一啲未能即時作出拘捕嘅情況嘅，係啦。咁而呢啲情況亦都係有一啲係可能你哋會覺得係某一類嘅政見係啦。而我頭先亦都舉咗一啲嘅例子，係另一方面嘅政見其實都有係啦。咁所以我就唔會認同所謂警方執法不公啦，係啦。咁而我哋去決定是否即時作出拘捕呢，其實我哋當中有好多嘅考慮，咁啊包括我哋當時人手嘅情況啦，我哋當時嘅評估就係究竟我哋喺現場作出一個大型嘅拘捕嘅時候，係啦，究竟會唔會令到現場嗰個情況更加嘅升溫呢？係啦，因為我亦都喺度舉過一啲唔同例子嘅，就係譬如如果我哋真係要派出我哋嘅同事係啦，派咗我哋一大隊嘅同事去到某啲嘅現場裏邊作出即時拘捕嘅時候呢，就大家一個大型嘅衝突就在所難免。咁呢啲就係我有時會喺呢度提及過嘅，就係有一啲流血嘅事件呢，可能就未必避免得到。咁喺咁嘅情況底下，我哋警方喺部署嘅行動方面呢，其實係有好多好複雜嘅考慮，係啦。咁所以我喺度即係簡單咁概括講啦，就係其實我哋嘅準則係拘捕準則，其實我哋唔考慮佢嘅政見，唔考慮佢嘅身份，唔考慮職業，係啦。我哋亦都喺度講咗好多次，犯法就係犯法，違法就係違法。我哋對所有違法、對所有暴力嘅行為係啦，其實我哋都係會嚴肅跟進，絕不姑息嘅，係啦。 咁啊，就住你第二條問題裏邊所講嘅8月5號啦，嗱，根據我記錄，我見到8月5號其實就係北角同埋荃灣都有一啲嘅暴力事件發生咗啦。我嘅理解就係兩個警區嘅重案組咧，其實仍然係調查當中嘅。而其實我喺較早前亦都有再呼籲嘅，其實呢兩宗案件裏邊咧就好奇怪，傷者係唔願意挺身而出嘅。係啦，咁所以其實而家我哋都仲係有一啲好重要嘅資料同埋證據咧，係而家我哋都未能攞得到啊。係啦，咁所以我哋都好希望其實當日有聲稱係被毆打過嘅，係啦，又或者目擊嗰個案件嘅詳情嘅人士咧，其實係我哋係懇請你係啦出嚟向我哋提供翻資料嘅。咁我答案係咁多。
我諗咧結尾我想講少少咧，補充翻阿江 Sir 講嘅説話咧，就係其實喺過去3個月裏面咧，有好多場嘅暴力事件。其實警方喺過去已經拉咗超過1400人。呢1400人裏面咧，唔同政見、唔同事件裏面都有。有啲事件我哋係拉得多啲，有啲事件我哋需要調查時間長啲。咁所以首先希望大家唔好喺呢度咧，我哋仲作出拘捕嘅時候咧，先下咗一個定論，就係話我哋只拉某一啲人。喺過去嘅唔同記者會裏面，我哋已經將唔同嘅事件拘捕嘅人數咧講咗出嚟㗎啦，咁先唔好喺度作一個定論先。第二就係其實頭先都提及過，現場唔即刻拉有好多考慮，咁但係其實咧睇到我哋一路咧係就住唔同嘅事件咧，不停去追究翻一啲真係違法咗嘅人士。咁我亦都想借住呢個時間講咧，就係有啲案件我哋唔能夠好有效咁拘捕咧，某程度上就係有啲被捕或者被施襲嘅人咧。其實佢係唔願意出嚟去提供一啲資料俾警方，呢個對於我哋去作出一啲跟進或者拘捕咧係有好大嘅困難嘅。咁所以喺我嘅開始記者會嘅時候嘅主角都講咗啦，任何嘅暴力事件嘅受打嘅人咧、受襲嘅人咧，我哋都好希望佢同警方講翻個事情，同埋俾一啲資料我哋，可能夠令到我哋作出一啲跟進。咁最後咧，我想講咧就係。呢啲人呢，頭先你所講嘅私了或者互相毆打，甚至有啲人係群毆一啲普通市民呢。我諗呢啲呢係一啲好暴力同埋我哋唔能夠接受嘅行為嚟嘅。我希望市民同在座唔好再為呢啲用暴力去解決事件嘅人呢，再揾藉口，將個責任呢竟然係推俾警方嗰度。我覺得呢個完全係倒果為因嘅一個講法。唔該晒。
記者會完畢，多謝各位。
點解佢要求警員遮樣咧？點解你哋唔俾佢遮嘅？不過好有分別喎，謝 Sir。
直叫佢澄清解釋啊嘛。係咯，佢自己。